Good morning, everyone. Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Good. So, thanks for joining us this morning for a session of TFM&A. It promises to be a great event, and thank you for choosing to spend the first half hour with me. So, my name is Liz Smyth, and I'm lucky enough to be leading the marketing team for Marketon in Europe. Can I get a quick show of hands? Who's heard of Marketon? Yay, it's starting to work, good. If you're not familiar with Marketon, we provide complete marketing software that helps you generate more leads, nurture more leads, and ultimately close more leads. We're headquartered in Silicon Valley. Our European headquarters is in Dublin, and we're a fairly young company. We've been around for about 6 years, and over that time we've had some great accolades and industry throughout, and recognition throughout the industry, including one of the symbols you see on here being voted by the Salesforce.com customer community as the best marketing software application out there, and we've won that award for 5 years in a row. So we're here today to talk about marketing, social ROI, and I guess the question is, why are we even talking about this? Well, our biggest pain point for marketers is attribution, and that has amplified and become even more complex since the advent of this thing called social. And this is a survey from the chief marketer where they asked marketers what their biggest pain point was. Simple question. And the number one answer was that it was hard to calculate ROI accurately. See if this works. It does. The number two answer was that it was hard to calculate ROI accurately. So you can see here it's difficult to track or attribute leads to the proper sources, which is basically the same thing. Now, even though social is seen as a new and exciting new thing that we should all be doing, our goals for it are exactly the same as they are for our other marketing methods. So this is also from the chief marketer, and they asked, what are your goals for social? And they're exactly the same as they are for everything else we do in marketing. It's all about generating leads, generating sales, and doing more with all of our marketing. So we've learned over the years what works for B2C and B2C, B2B and B2C companies from an ROI perspective. And what I'm hoping to do today is share with you some of those learnings that we've had and give you some insights into what we've learned from our own marketing practices at Marketon. And the goal is to leave you at the end of today with some real actionable things that you can do and take away into your own organizations. So can I get another quick show of hands? Has anyone in the room been asked by a manager or an executive what is this social thing doing for us and why we should be investing in it at all? Okay, that's not surprising. So here's a graphic that we've borrowed from one of our customers, and we find it's a really simple way to describe it and to explain it. And this particular customer used this image to explain social and why they should be investing in it to his executive team. So what he said was, look, we do a lot of marketing across a lot of programs, both paid and unpaid, be they email, events like this one, social, etc. And we do that to a known universe of people. In this case, the email database and the Twitter followers and the Facebook fans all amounted to 250,000 names across the board. But what he said is that the real opportunity of social is to get below this waterline. So if we can get the folks, that 250,000 people that he had in his database, if we can get those guys to start become brand advocates and start to share their messages with the millions of connections they have through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it might be, that's where we're going to get the real impact. So the real promise of social explosion isn't about updating your Facebook feeds to people that you already know. It's about turning those people who are following you into advocates to help spread your message. And it's those peer-to-peer recommendations that are really going to make a difference. So the true ROI of social then is when you think of it as a layer on top of everything else that you're doing. So where we get this yellow bar is where I get a lift on everything else, and I mean everything else that you might be doing. So if I'm creating content, if I'm driving campaigns, as opposed to thinking of it narrowly in a silo by itself, often in a little department. And if you pause for a second and think about the numbers, and the challenge with these numbers is that as soon as you ever put numbers about social media on a slide or on a piece of paper, they're out of date as soon as you've hit save, right? Because this is a fairly nascent industry and it's changing all the time. So 700 billion minutes spent on Facebook each month. LinkedIn gets 2 new members every second. Think about it, it's fairly powerful. 1 million Twitter accounts created daily, and we know a lot of those go inactive and get shut down, but it's still quite a staggering number. 32 billion, the number of search queries, Twitter handles every month. We also have some stats around Pinterest and the percentage of social media driven purchases that it's contributing to. And then Facebook recently announced that they went over the 1 billion mark. So it's really important. I mean, it's not something that we can ignore, and it's a great opportunity for us. What I would say, though, is that there are conversations going on about your brand and your products probably all the time. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you're not listening and engaging and seeding some of those conversations, well, then you're probably missing out on a huge opportunity. So Mark Zuckerberg on an earnings call, on a Facebook earnings call last year, was quoted as saying that the basic idea here is that the best type of advertising is a message from a friend. And that's quite something, given that it's coming from a man who sells advertising, essentially, on Facebook, allows people to buy brand consumer messaging on Facebook. But he recognizes that the brand consumer messages have a lower trust rate than peer-to-peer messages. A recent Nielsen survey found that 33% of people believe what they see in a banner ad or some of that brand consumer messaging, but a whopping 92% of people trust a product recommendation from a friend. So the social landscape is a constantly buzzing web that never sleeps, and there's no way you're going to be able to keep up with it without some basic tools. Unfortunately, that's a bit of a cluttered space as well. There's a plethora of tools out there, both to help you listen and monitor conversations that are happening online. There's tools out there that will help you broadcast brand consumer messaging, and then there are lots of tools out there to help you engage in those conversations and make sure that you're giving people reasons to engage. But before you get involved in any of those tools or start putting tools in place, you kind of need to think about your customer currency. So what's going to motivate your customer to share that content, share that offer, whatever it might be, with their community? And there's basically 2 ways you can think about it. The first is what we call material currency, and the second is emotional currency. And the first example of material currency here that I have to share with you is a discount. And a discount is a really good way to get a prospect off the fence, right? And this is an example of a social campaign that was run by Salesforce. And like that, it was building on top of a broader program which was around their user conference. And the premise here was that for every registration that was referred, Salesforce would offer the referring party a discount on their Dreamforce registration, Dreamforce being their annual conference that takes place in San Francisco every year. So that's pretty powerful. The second one is, I'm going to skip through the slides here in the interest of time. The second one on the emotional side of things is knowledge. And this particular offer comes from a group called Practice Fusion, and it's an online medical records company. And they have tons and tons of great content. All of their blogs are written by medical experts, etc. So if I work in the healthcare industry, if I'm a hospital worker, or even if I'm a doctor in a private practice, I can use their content, and I feel like the smartest person in the room by sharing that content. So being able to provide your prospects with good content that they think is worthy of sharing and makes them feel like the smartest person in the room is really invaluable. So now you've figured out what your current customer currency is, but that's really only half the story. It's great that people are out there, they're sharing content on the web, and they're sharing it with their networks, and you're getting the referrals back from that. But in order to get the real ROI, you need to figure out, what's the where, the what, and the who. And I'll talk to you about what I mean when I say that. It's really about understanding what's the information behind the interaction that's happening on social media. So first of all, we talk about the what. And the what is basically what offers are being shared. And this is a screenshot from the Marketon social marketing tool. And you'll see in this funnel at the top, and let's just say in this example, this is a conference like the Dreamforce one we just looked at. It's not Dreamforce, but we can pretend for a second. Oh, sorry. Let me get the laser. So at the top, there was an offer on the web page for the conference registration. And you can see that just over 3,000 people came to that web page organically. Of those, you can see how many people interacted with the offer and signed up and then chose to share that with their networks. And that's the number at the shares button right there, the last of the blue. But where it gets really interesting is at the gold bar. And you can see of all of those links that were shared out on Facebook, email, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it might have been, 3,000 more people came back. And 168 of those signed up for whatever the offer was. So that's pretty powerful, right? 168 new sign-ups simply from making it shareable and letting people communicate and share that offer out with their networks. Over on the right-hand side, you can see the audience and the social reach of all of those people who decided to share. The social impressions is the possible number of times that could have been viewed in somebody's Twitter feed, Facebook feed, over email, etc. And you can see the social impressions is higher than the social reach because some of the sharers chose to share more than once. The next is the where. Oops. The next is the where. And you really need to get an understanding of where your conversations are happening, where those people are talking about your brand and what they're saying. So I can tell you that there's a perception out there, particularly in the B2B space, that most of those conversations are happening on LinkedIn. And particularly B2B companies are very, very surprised that these conversations are also happening on Facebook. And Facebook is something they should really be paying attention to. And this is an example from a B2B client of ours that you can see the impact of that is. So it's important to understand the where, and you can make sure that you're communicating via those channels and communicating with the right people. Probably the most important, so it's here last but not least, is the who. And I would say paying attention to who is sharing your content is probably the most important thing you can do. Who are those brand advocates that are out there talking about you and are bringing people back to your website, etc. So knowing who your influencers are. And the important thing to remember here is that somebody might have a reach, they might have like 5,000 friends on Facebook, but each time they share content, if only one of those people come back, it's really not significant. Whereas if you compare that to somebody who might have 500 friends on Facebook, and every time they share a piece of content, maybe 20% of their friends come back, well then that's someone that you need to be paying particular attention to. That's someone that you need to take care of. Maybe give them advance notice of your products, give them advance access, give them access to exclusive content. Really communicate with them in a different way so that they can continue to help market for you, which is vital. Also important is the kind of content you create. And the way to capitalize and get your content into the hands of those people above the waterline and start encouraging them to bring that content and fly your flag below the waterline is to really figure out what kind of content is going to help you do that. And what I'd like to do now is share with you some of the examples that we've learned internally at Marketon, and hopefully inspire you to think about things that you could do at your own company from the learnings that we've had. So we've done a lot of things. We've tried a lot of different methods, some of which have been designed specifically to capitalize on that peer-to-peer recommendation aspect, but also we've tried lots of experiments outside that, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. So in the vein of talking about things that we're already doing and adding that social layer on top, what I'd like to tell you about is this piece of content, and we generate a lot of content. This piece of content that we created around inbound marketing, and we went out to make it social. Now, if I can pause for a second and ask for a quick show of hands, who's creating content in their companies for marketing purposes? Yeah, pretty much everyone. It's a big thing these days. So if you are going to devote time, money, and energy to creating that content, why wouldn't you make it social? It's not going to cost you anything else, and you can get a big impact from it, as we saw from this particular piece. So it's a white paper on inbound marketing, an ebook essentially, and here's the example. We created the ebook. We had 17,000 views of that ebook through promotion and everything else. Then we turned it into just a more visual version of the same thing. Exactly the same content, just more visual. Put it up on SlideShare, and pretty much, 8 times got views that were 8 times the original views, just by making it more visual, but also by making it more shareable. So word of mouth marketing has always been important, but now with social marketing we have the ability to drive it and we have the ability to measure it. And making all of your content social is a very easy way, a quick win, to make that happen. Another thing we've done is using Facebook promoted posts. And the 2 things I'd like to share with you here. The first is on the messaging. So we always try to have some kind of clever visual, some kind of entertaining, eye-catching image that is backed up by a strong offer or a piece of content to encourage people to click through. The other thing we found is that Tuesday mornings, at least for us, is the best time. It's when we see our best results. So Facebook promoted tweets are promoted posts, Freudian slip, are really a good way to do things. The other stats that we have on this is that this particular example came up originally for our fans, for about 9,000 people, and that's about 36% of our followers are fans on Facebook. But when we promoted it, we were able to get to 34,000. So that's a significant uplift from promoted posts, and it gives us a significant way to track our ROI, etc. I'm going to come back to this particular thing in a second and show you how we measured our ROI specifically. But first I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how Facebook determines what goes into feeds and what doesn't. So the casual social nature of social media is perfect for nurturing leads, but it's all pretty useless unless you can get those posts and that information to show up in people's feeds. So has anybody heard of EdgeRank? All right, a few people. So EdgeRank is the algorithm that Facebook used to determine what shows up in people's feeds. And EdgeRank is very similar in how it works to the Google algorithm. So if you search for something on Google, it's not going to return the thing that was most recently posted on the internet. It's going to run a complex algorithm to try and figure out what is most relevant to you. And Facebook do something very, very similar. And there's 3 aspects to how they determine what shows up in people's feeds. The first is time, so how old is that post? The second is weight, and each content or each different type of post has a different weighting. And if I talk you through those in terms of the things that have the highest weighting down to the lowest weighting, videos and photos get the most points. So visual content is definitely a must. Posts to other Facebook pages also score pretty highly. Then posts that link to other websites, 3rd down the list. And then a plain old post is probably bottom of the list in terms of the number of points that it gets. After that, shares, comments, likes, etc. Are at the bottom of the pile. But the most important aspect of all of this is affinity. So if people have interacted with your posts in the past, that signals an affinity to your content and the information that you're sharing. So that stuff ends up showing up more prominently in the relevant feeds. And if you think about your own Facebook page and that some friends' updates appear more frequently than others, that's probably because Facebook has figured out that you've interacted with their posts in the past and that it's more relevant to you and that you're going to find it more interesting. The other thing that we've done is adhere to the 411 method for posting content, and I think this was originally coined by the Content Marketing Institute, and we've applied it to pretty much all of our marketing campaigns and all of our marketing programs. And what that means is that for every 4 educational, informational, or even entertaining posts, we'll post 1 hard sell message and 1 soft sell message. And the reason that's important is because it gives people a reason to engage with you in a less committed way, if you like, and allows people to engage with you a whole lot more. So it also keeps your affinity high. So people might like a post or comment on a post that's fun or entertaining, and then that guarantees that, well, it doesn't guarantee, but it increases the likelihood of you showing up more prominently in their regular feed. So it's pretty important. This affinity thing you should really try and pay attention to. We've also had some good success at the top of the funnel with promoted tweets. And this is an example of a campaign that we run promoting another event. And we had a regular cadence of tweets going out every 2 weeks leading up to the event. Now, when I say it's good at the top of the funnel in that it's generated quite a lot of prospects for us, and the average cost per prospect so far has been $37, which is not too bad for us at the top of the funnel. Jury is still out on the pipeline in terms of the revenue and opportunities because this is a fairly new campaign. So we're watching that closely to see if it's something that will continue or not. If I go back to the content that I shared with you a moment ago, that inbound marketing piece, we only spent $5,000 on this. And it hasn't been amazing from what we call the top of the funnel perspective, but in terms of people engaging with the content and sharing it with their networks, it's actually been pretty effective in what we call the middle of the funnel, so that nurturing. So people who we already know engaging with the content and sharing it out. So it's had a pretty big impact from a multi-touch attribution perspective. And I'll share with you some more detail on that right now. Do people know what I'm talking about when I say multi-touch versus first touch? Hands up if you know what I mean. All right, great. So for those of you who didn't put your hand up, first touch is basically where this campaign or this program gets the entire pipeline credit for that's created from this particular marketing campaign. The multi-touch is where it gets a segment of, or a portion of the pipeline that has been generated from an opportunity, if this touch was part of that opportunity. And I'll show you how you can track that in a second. So this is what we call the money slide, and you can see here on the color coding on the right hand side with the green and the red. So the SlideShare one that we just looked at has been really good from a multi-touch perspective, considering we only spent $5,000 on it. And then the paid ads, when we're using that as a channel in its own right, well, they haven't been working too well. But you know, the key message here from an ROI perspective is, you know, adding that social layer to something that you're already doing is a lot more effective than just doing something on social for the sake of it. And this is what's really going to get people at that above the waterline in that iceberg graphic to start penetrating below that waterline. So how do we take advantage of this learning that we had? Well, we publish a lot of content, as I said, and this is a book that we published late last year called The Definitive Guide to Social Marketing. Some of you I see have that already. If you don't, you can stop by our stand, or I think Jane is out here armed with a pile of them. You can take one of those away with you at the end of the presentation. But The Definitive Guide to Social Marketing was a big project for us, and if we're going to write a book like that, we're obviously going to add some social to it. So when people arrived to download this ebook on our website, there was a simple share to win contest on the right hand side of the landing page, And it was a simple referral offer, right? So for every 5 downloads that resulted from a referred or shared link, that person got a hard copy, a printed copy of the book, and a t-shirt. The results we saw were that for each shared link, we got 25 clicks back. So it was obviously pretty successful. That means we got in front of 70,000 new people that we wouldn't otherwise have been exposed to. And the short of it was that we generated 300 new leads. That's pretty important. And one of the founders of our company talks about this analogy of the dance and social being really, really great for getting lots and lots of people to the dance and getting lots and lots of people in the door. So it's terrific from a top-of-funnel perspective. But then when you go to the dance, you don't just stand around, do you? You're like maybe flirting a little bit, nurturing a little bit, or maybe checking people out and ranking them or scoring them. So it's important that social plays into all of this. And if you think about how you can use social to engage with people as they interact and capture that behaviour in your scoring and everything else, well then it becomes pretty powerful. So let's talk about nurturing for a second. Nurturing is a subject that's near and dear to our heart. We have another book on it, The Definitive Guide to Lead Nurturing, that you can get at our standard download from our website. And if I had to summarise lead nurturing in one word, it would be relevance. And for us, there are 3 aspects of relevance. The first is the buying stage. So making sure that the messages you're sending to people are reflective of where they are in the buying cycle. And for us, early stage content is all about that thought leadership, that best practice content. Mid-stage content might be people who are actively looking for what we do. And in that case, we offer buying guides and RFP templates and things like that. And then late-stage content is pretty much all about Marketon and our products and our customer references and companies that are having success with our product. The second is persona, and for us we have 3. That is marketing, sales, and executive. But we have customers that have a whole lot. Okay, and then the third is dynamic customization, where we use dynamic content to make sure that what we're sending out is relevant to the individual's industry. It might be geographic, which is particularly relevant to me here in EMEA, making sure that all of the messages that we send out to our customer and prospect base have EMEA contact details, etc. So I'll come back to the slide where I started. And the ROI for us really, really comes from thinking of social as an integrated component of everything else that we're doing. We have customers talk about PPC programs that they're running and saying that they're running all of these PPC programs on Google and they're paying maybe £1 for each of the links each of the clicks that are coming through to a landing page. But what I encourage you to do is think about putting some social sharing opportunity on that PPC landing page. And if of all of the links that get shared through that, if even just 4 people come back on every share, and think about it, we got 25 people back on every share, that reduces the cost of that click from £1 to 20p. So it's not about doing social campaigns, it's about making every campaign social. Coming towards the end, and what you're now looking at is what we call the opportunity analyzer, which is a screenshot from the Marketer product. And what it's tracking is all of the marketing interactions that have happened over the course of an opportunity. So from opportunity creation date on the left-hand side all the way to the top of that graph on the right-hand side when the opportunity closed. And we as marketers know that there's never one thing that causes an opportunity to causes a cold lead to turn into a closed deal. It's multiple touches and it's multiple interactions along the way. So just like an email campaign or a PPC click or a click on a banner ad, ultimately you can track all of your social on this as well. So you can see if there was a slide share in this example or an interesting moment was added about viewing the visual content marketing piece of content. So with that, I'm getting a time warning, so it's time to wrap it up. And what I'd say is that it's really important to leverage that peer-to-peer influence in everything that you do. So as I said a moment ago, it's not about running social campaigns, it's about making every campaign social. Pick the right currency for your customers and prospects. What you should probably do is have a palette of things that you have at your disposal, be they contests, voting, etc., because the same thing is not going to be relevant across all of the campaigns. Authentic social interaction, we've talked about that. It drives more ROI than paid ads. And that's because people perceive advertising as just that. There are lots of stats out there from Nielsen and others that show that we as people will tune out anything that we perceive as advertising 85% of the time. But if we get a message or a recommendation from a friend, well, we'll pay attention to that 90% of the time. Most leads are not ready to dance, so nurture those relationships and think about it as you do for any other campaign that you're running. For example, you wouldn't run an email campaign and say, oh my gosh, no one clicked on the link or bought my product as a result of that email campaign, so I'm never going to do email again. But the reality is, there's a lot of people out there thinking about social that way. And I think the important thing to remember is that it should be integrated marketing with everything else that you do.